This week, the NAR settlement goes into effect. And I keep getting calls from people I know asking me questions about how this affects them because they're hearing on the news that a seller no longer has to pay for a buyer or broker's compensation and that it's going to bring costs down. And so I just thought I would do a video. So here goes. The settlement with NAR came up with three things. Basically, it said a seller no longer needed to offer compensation to a buyer's broker. And the second thing is that there had to be more transparency and there had to be an agreement between the buyer and the buyer's agent stating how they were going to get paid. And then three, it would no longer let MLSs publish if there was some sort of compensation offered to a buyer's broker. They would not let it be published on the MLS. So how does that affect us here in Washington? It affects us much less than you would think, and here's why. We have one of the best MLSs in the nation, in my opinion. The Northwest MLS was so forward-thinking. So long before this ever came down, in 2019, we did the first thing. So the first thing we did was say a seller no longer needed to offer compensation to a buyer's broker. And that started back in 2019. So since 2019, our MLS has not required that. The second thing that our Northwest MLS did is in 2022, they decided to go ahead and make it more transparent. So they made it so that in the listing agreements, a seller could still offer compensation, but it was completely decoupled. It didn't go through the listing firm. It was compensation offered directly to a buyer's broker and then compensation separately offered to their listing broker. So you had two different people that they were offering it to, and it wasn't just the listing agent saying, hey, I will split this with you, right? The other thing that they did is in the forms, they put it on the front page of how much their agent was being paid. So a buyer could see on the front page of the purchase and sale how much their agent was making and how much the seller was offering in compensation. So they made transparency at that point. And then finally, at the beginning of this year, Washington did a law that says that all buyers have to have an agreement signed with their agent prior to working with them. So that also does transparency. It lets a buyer know upfront how their agent's going to be paid, and it lets them negotiate what that looks like and what the fees are going to be. So there are a lot of MLSs that were not involved in the original lawsuit that joined in with the settlement. The Northwest MLS chose not to, and here's why. We had already accomplished the things that the settlement were really important, as far as we had decoupled and said that you didn't have to offer compensation. We had made it transparent, and we don't feel that not publishing it on the MLS is in the line of transparency. We actually feel that that is a step backwards. I definitely feel it's a step backwards. That means backroom deals. That means a buyer not knowing how much money they need to come up with when they're out looking for homes. You know, if the seller is not offering a compensation of any sort towards their agent, then does that mean that they now need to come up with that much more funds? And so our MLS decided not to join in with that settlement because we felt that disclosing it was better than what the NAR settlement came up with. The other thing is that we have been doing everything else this entire time. So a seller does not have to offer compensation. That being said, it's a disadvantage to those that are first-time buyers or those that don't have loads of cash to get in and buy a home. This is a very expensive area. So most of them are using their cash to get in and do the down payment. So many of us still recommend that offering some sort of compensation towards the buyer's brokerage is a form of marketing, right? It's a form of getting the most amount of buyers to come look at your home. And so there are still the majority of sellers are offering compensation, even though they no longer have to. And so what we have in place is something that's very transparent, and it gets the most people in to see your home, but you're not forced to. You can choose to do otherwise. So that's why it doesn't change as much here. We're going to continue to publish it on the MLS so that people can see what they're dealing with and how much they need to have when they come to closing. We had already decoupled it. We had already made it transparent. And as of the beginning of this year, everyone who does any type of real estate with a real estate agent has to have a contract of some sort so that everybody is clear about how they get paid. So if you have questions or you want to talk more about it, give me a call. I'm happy to clarify anything that I might have tripped over in this video or to answer any other specifics. So y'all have a great day.